Hello, HCC Eagles. I am Ashley Rhodes Watkins, Student Life Coordinator for the Northeast College. I want to thank you all for joining us again today on this wonderful Thursday, counting down that one more day to spring break. So I want to thank you all for joining us today. Today, we have some interesting information that's going to be given to you. We had interesting information yesterday, and we got another wealth of knowledge coming your way today. So I would like to introduce to you today Miss Deborah Blacklock Sloan. Miss Sloan is a sixth-generation Texan, native Houstonian, and is a self-employed historical researcher and genealogist. She is also the historic research director for the RBH Yates Museum Incorporated in Freedmanstown National Register Historic District. Her memberships include the Harris County Historical Commission, Afro-American Historical and Genealogical Society, Willie Gay H. Town Chapter, Association of Professional Genealogists, Oak Park Historic Cemetery Association, Friends of the African American Library at the Gregory Lincoln School, and Harris County African American Cultural Heritage Commission. Ms. Blacklock Sloan is also an avid preservationist and is responsible for 12 City of Houston protected landmark designations and 27 state county historical markers in Harris County. She has received numerous accolades for preservation and volunteer efforts, including a 2007 MVP Harris County Historical Commission Award, 2010 Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated, I don't want to mispronounce it, Luelia Walker Harrison Dove Award, 2011 YMCA Minority Achiever Award, 2012 Merit Ladies Social Art and Charity Club Pioneer Lady of Distinction Award, and 2014 Phyllis Wheatley Legacy Torch Barrier Award. Her past collaborations include authoring and editing articles for the African American Handbook of Texas, creating interpretive panels for Bethel Church Park located in the Freedmanstown, UNESCO Slave Route Project, creating a walking tour app for Emancipation Park in Third Ward, researching descendants of enslaved persons of the Bernardo Plantation in Waller County, Texas, Houston's Frost Town Settlement and Descendants of Black Liberators Project. She is currently documenting African American historic resources in Texas counties, working with local groups to erect 4 lynching markers in Houston as a campaign of the Equal Justice Initiative's Community Remembrance Project, and working with several groups on projects related to Freedmanstown and the Third Ward area. Over the years, Ms. Blacklock Sloan has presented several local workshops on African American family research and has been featured in several newspapers and publications. She has also appeared on Great Day Houston segments where she researched talk show host Deborah Duncan's maternal and paternal grand ancestors. Ms. Blacklock Sloan believes finding one's ancestors leads to finding yourself. So without further ado, I am bringing to our Zoom stage Ms. Deborah Blacklock Sloan, who's going to give us a wealth of knowledge in regards to genealogy. Thank you so much for being here with us today. And so I'm going to hand over the stage to you.
Thank you, Ms. Rose. I appreciate you asking me to be able to share methods on genealogy and why it's important to do so. So let's get started. And before I start, I am looking for young folks to work with. So we can't keep doing this work forever, and we're looking for young people. So if you're interested, please contact me. Thank you. So I am a Alex Haley fan, I should say fanatic. I was in college when the miniseries first premiered, and the idea of seeing Black folks for 7 nights, watching their history unfold, it just blew my mind. And the running theme, as you can see in my presentation, in the miniseries was preserving one's family history through each generation. And that is important because once we preserve our history, it tells everything about us, how we originated and how we came to be, and it gives us a sense of identity. And I hope that David Wolper doesn't mind me stealing some of his scenes from the miniseries. So if you're going to begin genealogy, it is a monumental task. It is time consuming. And ladies and gentlemen, I spend most of my hours day and night researching because I am an addict. You need to be persistent when you do so. It's challenging and frustrating. And again, I tell people it's like this great big puzzle. And what you're doing is finding the clues to solve it. You will run into brick walls and you get frustrated, but you must keep going. And it also takes determination and requires a lot of patience. So there are phases of genealogy. What you want to do when you first start is you want to research the family of your ancestor to 1870. You want to identify the last slaveholder and his family. You want to identify your enslaved ancestors, and you want to take a DNA test. And I have done all of these phases, and you will see so in the presentation. If you're going to do genealogy, you must brush up on your reading. You must learn about the African civilization, the African Black diaspora, the slavery in the Americas, free Blacks in America, emancipation, Reconstruction, the Great Migration, and even Black Native American ancestry. I have a lot of people who come up to me and say, my grandmother was Cherokee, my grandmother was that. And so there is information on Native American ancestry as well. What you see here are some of my favorite websites. My maternal side is Louisiana, and I like to look at Gwen Midlow Howe's Files of Enslaved and Free Africans. There is Ancestry.com, which is a paid subscription, Cindy'sList.com, FamilySearch.org, which is a free subscription. All you need is a username and password. And then Low Country Africana, which is my dad's side of the family from South Carolina, Georgia, and then Florida. I am a Gullah Geechee girl, in case you're wondering. These are some of the records you need to look for. There are some funeral home records, not very many. Check the cemeteries, the church records, the obits, old newspapers, city directories, military, probates and estates, wills, court cases, taxes, bills of sale, divorce, marriage, birth and death, and also deed and land grants. And I'm gonna turn my camera off just in case it's a distraction. Okay, let's get that slide to go. So how to get started? You want to interview your parents, your grandparents, and other relatives, even family friends. Check the family Bible because growing up, the family Bible had all kinds of vital information in there. So you've got an old family Bible hanging around, check that. Check the obits and marriages, birth and death records as well. And then what you really want to do, once you gather information, you want to decide which side of the family you're going to research. Are you going to research your mother's side of the family or your father's side of the family? And when you pick one of those sides, then you want to decide, do you want to do your mother's father or your mother's mother? So stick to one line at a time because otherwise you will be all over the place. Then start with what you know, and then even get oral history as well as use an obituary. And then you want to use the US Census, beginning with 1940, working your way backwards to 1870 to find your ancestor. And I will tell you this, you guys, because this is real serious. I have interviewed people for oral history, and most of them do not want to talk about it because it's so painful and shameful. And even my father, who's in his 80s, he won't watch anything that has to do with slavery or anything because it's just so painful for him, and was also painful for my grandfather. So you may get some resistance. They may not want to talk about it. So again, be prepared for resistance, but also remember you can go around them because you know, your ancestors' footprint is documented. Now, if you want to start your research with an obituary, you can do so. This is my grandfather's obituary. He was born in 1914. And I will say that the obits are a great source of information, but sometimes they have errors in them. The maiden names may be misspelled or wrong. Birthdays are wrong. You know, the parents' names are wrong. And so the only way to document that is to look up a government record. And this, again, this is a an obit of my grandfather, William Blacklock. So once you look at the obit and get that information, then you can start with the census that's closest to your ancestor's birth year. And so this is the 1940 census of my father. And then this is my grandfather, William, which is the obit you just saw, and my grandmother here. And so again, you want to work your way backwards. And again, some of this information may be off a little bit. My dad's birthday is off a little bit, but this is the record you want to start with after you use an obit. You want to start with the census. The censuses were released every 10 years, beginning with 1790. And again, the latest census is 1940. I can't wait until the 1950 census is released as well. I want to add this too. You may not find your ancestors in a census. It could be that they were in transit. Sometimes the records were burned in the courthouses, and could be something where your ancestor did not want to be listed in the census, and he just avoided the census taker. Or sometimes the census taker just missed your ancestor's address altogether, because sometimes people lived in rural areas, and the census taker may not have wanted to venture in that area. So I just wanted to warn you that sometimes your ancestor may be in one census and he may not be in another. So this is an 1870 census of my second great grandfather, Sam Blacklock. So this is the first phase of genealogy. You want to locate your ancestor in an 1870 census. And what's important about the 1870 census is it's the first census where Blacks who were formerly enslaved are listed by name, as you can see, age, and birthplace as well. And again, all Blacks were not enslaved, so you may have an ancestor who is listed in a free census. So once you've done as much research as you can do on the computer, it's time to take a road trip to actually find your ancestor's footprint. So here's the second phase of genealogy. You want to identify your ancestor slaveholder, and I found this information in one of the books at the Clayton Genealogical Library, which is one of the best libraries in the country after the Mormon Library in Utah. And this information was available in several of the books at Clayton Library, and this identifies my third great ancestors enslaved by a family whose last name was Strong from Georgia. The third phase of genealogy is you want to locate your ancestor in a probate record, and to the left is an 1854 probate record of my second great ancestors. They are listed by age and how much they are worth. For instance, my great grandfather Henry is 26 years old, and he's worth $1,100. And obviously, the older you are, the more you're worth, because that's the more work you can do. And what I did was I compared this 1854 document to an 1870 census. And as you can see, here's Henry here. Here's Noisy, his wife, and Lucy, and Francis. All of these people are listed in that document. And Adeline is my second great grandmother. So you do want to locate your ancestor in a probate record. Some of these records may have been destroyed, but there may be other records as well. One other document you can find when you're researching are marriage licenses. It was very important to Blacks to get married. You know, marriage was not recognized by the white slaveholder in some cases, but they felt they were married because they had children together, even though the male may have been staying on another plantation and the mother and the children on a neighboring plantation. They felt that they were a family unit, and so it was very important to them to get married. This marriage license is dated 1873, and this is in Rusk County in Henderson, Texas, in case I have some relatives online. Another record you can look for is a Freedmen's Bank record, and the Freedmen's Bank records are online. This is a record of my third great grandfather, George Blacklock, Again, this person is from South Carolina, and this is a very valuable record because it lists so much vital information. You know, where he's living in Florida, how old he is, what his occupation is, who his children are, who his parents are, and how long he's been in Jacksonville, Florida, and even lists his occupation and his complexion, which is coffee. And I'm not sure what color coffee is for a Black person in 1871. And also, I want to note that the signature that you see below, my father has that same type of bad writing for his signature as well. What I want to point out now is that, you know, you guys probably hear the word slaves and free slaves, and it drives me crazy. So Africans and Negroes were not slaves. They were enslaved. The institution of slavery was a condition placed upon them. And as you can see, some of them emerged resiliently. So they were not freed slaves, and they were not slaves. They were not born slaves. That condition was placed upon them. Now, this has to do with DNA, and I'll get to that slide about that later. So if you can imagine that Africans were taken from the West Coast here and then loaded on ships and cargo holds. So there would have been several stops, and this is part of the slave trade route, which you guys, I'm sure you know about. But imagine that if a family is captured, imagine that they're separated. So you're gonna have somebody dropped off in maybe South America, maybe Central America, maybe West Indies, as my grandfather was. So you're going to have that family's going to be separated. So as a result, you're going to have DNA all over the place, and even here in North America. So just imagine, you know, again, that your roots could be in all of these places. And locally, for instance, this is a map of the major ports in the U.S. And so Galveston is where my ancestors would have come in at, my mother's ancestors anyway. But these are all of the major routes of the slave trade. So again, imagine your family being separated and some being in the Americas and then others maybe in North America. So again, this is a big deal as far as doing your DNA. And speaking of slave ships, so this is a 1825 slave ship manifest for my, 1845 slave ship manifest for my third great grandfather, Sim Blacklock, who you saw in the 1870 census. And by the time Africans were loaded on the ships, ladies and gentlemen, they already had anglicized names, as you could see. So he's Simon here, and then there's a John and a Julie on board with him as well, listing their sex and their age and their physical height. And I don't know if you can see it now, but the shipper is Robertson and Blacklock. And they are from South Carolina. They were one of the major slave factors in South Carolina. But again, I was so fortunate to find this document. If you wanted to, I even went to New Orleans to get a better detail of this record. And so again, if you can find your ancestor in a slave ship manifest, that is a bonus. Another discovery you can find out is when you're researching your family lines, you find out all the different surnames. Can I tell you that when I worked at a library that worked at a middle school, the children were 7th and 8th graders. Most of them did not know their grandparents' last names. They only knew them by nicknames. You know, like my nickname for my grandchildren called me Nene. Well, these kids were 7th and 8th graders, and most of them didn't even know their grandparents' names. And I thought, wow, that's such a shame. And we just really need to tell our relatives what their names are, what their last names are. So if you have a family relative or a name that's been passed along, what you're looking at now is the names Charles, William, and Lynn are names that are in my family. And as you can see on the top left, my brother's name is Charles, my father's name is Charles, and my grandfather's name is William. So as you can see, this goes back to 3 generations. And a lot of times, if you've got that same situation, that means that that tradition came from slavery. You know, they kept the name going. one valuable reason that you want to research your family history is because inherited diseases. And as you can see, I've got some of the big ones up here: diabetes, sarcoidosis, hypertension, lupus, cardiovascular, and certain types of other disease, and sickle cell, which runs in my family. So the point is, when you're researching your family history, you want to get the death certificates because they are going to reveal a family history of illnesses and disease that may affect you. And so once you do that, you do want to be proactive with your health as well. Also, discover your inherited physical characteristics. These are photos of my son, my grandson to the left, Jackson, my son in the middle, Marcus, and a second great aunt. So all of them have dimples. My mother has dimples. My baby sister has dimples. I don't have dimples. I think I would have been cute with them, but I didn't get them. But the point is that, you know, you inherit certain characteristics from your ancestors: the eye color, your nose, feet, dimples, hands, hair, sometimes your voice or the way you walk or you build or your mannerisms. Some of that is inherited from your ancestors. So this slide is of my niece's father-in-law, her husband here in the middle, and her son, Aiden. When the Blacklock grandchildren were little, they would come over to my mom's house and they would pull the pots out and they would play with them. And but when Aiden, who in the last slide, when Aiden would come over, Aiden would pull the pots out and arrange them in a certain way, and he would beat on them. And we thought it was kind of odd, but when you see this clip, you'll see what I'm talking about. Let's see if I can get it to play.
Can you click the bottom right corner to make it bigger and turn the sound on?
Okay. Well, it's not showing anything. I'm clicking on it. Can you
It
see
may
it?
not, it may not because it's embedded in the PowerPoint.
But can you see it?
We can see it, yeah. We just couldn't hear anything, but we can see it.
Okay. Oh, let's see if I can turn it. Okay. And the volume's all the way up. I'm sorry. The volume's
It
all
may
the way
not
up.
allow it, you may have to change settings, so that's okay. We may not be able to listen
Okay.
to it, guys, because of the setting.
Okay. Okay, so maybe you're wondering if there's a drumming gene, perhaps. Again, Aiden had no formal training. He's like 2 years old on that video. Nobody taught him how to play the drums. So again, his grandfather plays the drums, his dad plays the drums, and he learned to play the drums genetically. That's what I'm gonna say. See, can I move on to the next slide? Let's see. So now this is the fourth phase of the of genealogy, DNA, and I know a lot of people are apprehensive about taking DNA. I took the test through Ancestry.com about 8 years ago, and so my percentages were 91% African, which I already knew, and then the other 9% here would be England and Northwestern Europe, and then Germanic Europe is 2%, and Eastern Europe 1%, and this is the map of those regions here. And this map is the 91% African percentage here. So I would encourage everyone to take a DNA test. It makes researching easy, and it also expands your family line. A lot of people are going like, well, I don't want my DNA in the system. Well, if you've been in the hospital, your DNA is already in the data bank. It already is. I know my parents didn't want to take the test, but I finally got both of them to take it, and I'm glad they did. But you want to get the oldest member in the family to take a test, you know, and then you want to take a test as well to compare the DNA percentages. I mean, it's very, very interesting, as you can see. This is a local DNA community in the Americas. As I said earlier, My dad's family is from, they would have migrated from Virginia on to South Carolina, on to Texas, which is the gold part here. And then Louisiana, again, is my grandmother, the purple part here. And then green, East Texas is my dad's side of the family. Again, so once they do that, once you do the DNA test, they break it down by percentages and by region as well. And this thing changes as more people test. You know, some of the percentages will go down or they will go up depending on how many of your ancestors are testing. The other thing I did was I reached out to an Anglo person with my surname. This guy that you see in the photo with me is Dr. Joe Blacklock. He's a neurosurgeon. He lives here in Houston, and about 20 years ago, I called director assistants, which you guys know nothing about, and got the names of 3 Blacklocks who lived in this area. And he was one of the guys that I called. He was out of town when I called him, and I got his secretary. And when I called her, I said, this is not a joke. I don't want any money. I said, I'm doing my family research and I'm trying to find out whether or not Dr. Blacklock's family is related, you know, if our families are intertwined. And she took my information and said, I'll have him give you a call. Well, I thought, well, nothing will come of it. And I tell you, about 2 or 3 weeks later, he called me back and said that he had also done some research. And he told me he would send me information on the family from the family historian. And you can't see the book to the right. There's a book he sent me. It had 161 pages of history in their family history. And I found some of my enslaved ancestors in there. And then later on, we did a documentary. He and I did a documentary about 7 years ago. And he presented me with this anvil that you see that has Blacklock on it. That came from a Canadian foundry. And he handed that to me as a gift. And I was very excited to receive it. So the real benefits of family history research. Again, our African ancestors were taken captive. They were sold, forced into slavery, and brought to the Americas. They built the economy of this country. And for 400 years, you know, they brought their skills and talents with them from the motherland. And you could see it in the architecture, in religion, in art, in food and dance, and even inventions in America. And those contributions shaped our heritage and culture. And finally, I hope that you guys will do or start in your family research, because you're gonna discover your identity, your history, your heritage, and the culture of your ancestors. So as a running theme in Roots, preserve it, celebrate it, pass it on to family members, especially the younger children, because after all, you descend from a land of kings and queens. And that is the end of my presentation.
Thank you so much, Ms. Deborah. Like, honestly, like a wealth of information that just came from this presentation. I've just been sitting here looking at the comments, and people are like, wonderful, like they're taking on this initiative. It's kind of like you sparked something within them to like, let me take the first step, you know, to do this research of my family. One question that came up was, you talked about Ancestry DNA. Are there any other companies or DNA companies that you would recommend students start at to start that whole piece?
Well, I like Ancestry DNA. Families, also did Family Search, and but Family Search didn't break it down by regions, you know, and that's what I mean, I got my results back, but I liked Ancestry DNA because they broke it down by region and by percentages, and that's what I'm looking for. And also, you know, people contact you and say, hey, I'm your second, third, fourth cousin. And so I make connections that way.
That is so true. I've taken the Ancestry DNA. I actually got it for a Christmas gift from my father-in-law. So I've done it, my daughter's done it, and my husband's done it. And we've gotten back our results. And like you said, it changes over time. It does. I get those little dings that say, hey, you got a new information and how it's changed about what regions your family was originated, where you were from, where your family was brought to, and where they settled. I get those little dings all the time saying I'm your second cousin. I have a young lady in Florida who says, "Hey, I did the ancestor DNA. It says that we're cousins. I'm researching my family, but I was adopted. So now I'm trying to find my birth family." And it was amazing. Like, it was just shocking just to see just that little information can now be connected to someone else, and now I'm connected to her. But it is wonderful, the information you brought. People are asking, how can they get some of this information that you presented today? Is there like a little hand guide or a handbook that you all offer within your organization that can help students start looking for
Oh,
their roots?
absolutely. Yes. Yes. I'll send that to you, Miss Rose, and
Okay.
so that they can use it as a guide. Absolutely. I'm just excited that your class is interested in starting. I really
They
am.
are. They've gone through asking about the presentation, where can they start? And then you talked about the genealogy library. Can you let them know where that's located?
Yes, the Clayton Genealogical Library is at 5300 Caroline, and that's in Midtown. I don't know if they're open. They have been closed because of the pandemic, but I'm hoping they they will reopen soon. But 5300 Caroline, Clayton Genealogical Family Library.
You talked about, just I want to bring this up. You talked about the family Bible, and it's so funny because my mother passed, but I have her Bible. And from her Bible, it has all of these dates and information. It has obituaries from her father, and then his father. So it's amazing that you talk about the family Bible, because my family's Bible carries a lot of information. And then when I went to my grandmother's house and had her Bible, oh, it goes all the way back. So it's so interesting that you talk about that, because yeah, my family does that. It birth dates, when new kids are born and grandkids. My grandmother was writing them down. She has them from her kids, her grandkids, her great grandkids, and her great great grandkids, that she's written down in this Bible, so that when she has to pass it on, we have this information.
I love that. And that's what the old African griots would do. They gather the history and they pass it on to the next generations. Exactly. I love that concept.
I love this information you have presented to us today. And students, if you have questions, please ask. I see Brian Chambers has asked, how emotional was this journey for you?
Oh, Mr. Chambers, when I saw that 1854 slave probate, I cried like a baby. It was just, I mean, I cried. I really did, because I've been looking for them for so long. And so, being new in genealogy, so basically what I did was I researched my ancestors to 1870. I never thought about finding the slaveholder until I heard Tony Burrows mention it. And so, yeah, it was very emotional. And I don't know, it's kind of maybe silly to some people, but there's something about seeing your ancestors' name on a piece of paper. It's just something about it. It just brings out so many emotions. And again, our ancestors, they want us to find them. I can't tell you how many times I've been researching, and I'd get in bed, and then I swear my ancestor would whisper in my ear, and I'd go back down to my computer, turn it on, and I'd find another clue. So my ancestors speak to me all of the time. I know some people kind of look sideways when I say that, but it is so true. So true.
And one thing I was just thinking about, when you're sitting here researching your ancestors and what they've been through, it gives you an appreciation for where you are today, because you wouldn't be where you are today without them. But then as you're researching, you've seen what they've gone through. As you were saying, you seeing their name on a piece of paper, when they came over, like, that shows you the strength they had, and now it's instilled in you. So it brings about that whole self-confidence and appreciation when you're able to go back and see what your family has done for you and to get
Right.
you where you are.
Right. And the idea of, if you think about what they've gone through, and so here I am today, I call it resilience. That's my key word, resilience, because I can imagine with my attitude and mentality, I can't imagine going through that, because I would have been a dead enslaved woman. So they were persistent, and I know it took a religion to get them through it, but they emerged resilient in spite of everything they went through. Families being separated, family members being killed. And so I think of resilience when I think of people, of our ancestors being enslaved.
Students, if you have questions, unmute yourselves, please ask. right, I think you all have asked the questions. I have Ms. Blacklock Sloan's information, her email address. So if you're looking to get information or to ask specific questions, please reach out to me so I can connect you with her. This presentation will be available for playback on the Student Life YouTube channel. We will make that available to you all so that way you can go back and look at the information that she provided to you on where you can start your research. Like this, absolutely amazing. Ready to get back in there and start. And as you say, I get a little down in the dumps. You know, you start so much, and then you get stopped about, okay, I can't find nothing else. But this kind of just put that little spark back into me, like, no, girl, keep going, just a little bit more. You know, so HCC Eagles, I thank you for being here with us today. I thank you for opening your mind and taking on this information. I hope you use it, share it with your family, share it with your friends who could not be here with us today. So I will see you all tonight. Hopefully we have our Black History concert from the couch where you can enjoy from the comforts of your home, bringing your friends, your family, your cousins, your sisters, your brothers with us tonight. Enjoy some poetry, some music, and just have a good time at home. So I thank you for being here with us. Keep connected with us. And if we do not see you tonight, have a safe and great spring break. Y'all have a good one.
Thank you.
Thank you.